There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no, which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go, and we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
Okay, all right. We're here. Yeah, it's the tech issues that you can have come to expect and hopefully not love like we don't. Social contract are already abound. So hopefully we will be able to get through an hour for this episode. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. Of course, you can check out all of our past episodes on our YouTube channel, our Rumble channel, and that's where our archives are. But we're also on Twitch, Blue Sky, Twitter, all of those things. So you can find us anywhere. Follow, subscribe, do the whole thing. So as always, Go ahead.
You're good. Sarah, you froze for a second. And that's when I'm like, do I start talking?
We are joined by my illustrious co-host, Mr. Mayor Jared, very talented Mr. Mayor Jared, who's responsible for our theme song. If you enjoyed that, he has many, many lovely song stylings for your enjoyment on the internet as well. So make sure to check and support him and all of the things. Check out his work and support him and all the things he does, because that's how he making money and entertain the people. So he's got a lot in store for us today. As a matter of fact, we're going to get the teacher treatment. Jared is an ex-teacher, so we're about to get the teacher treatment, and he's going to educate us on by reading some of Super Imperialism by Michael Hudson and how that applies to now. And we'll talk about some of the current things going on. There's a lot of stupidity as per usual. It's a little premature to say that Trump's ratings are in the toilet. Not quite yet. And they never really will be, because still like 99% of Republicans will always support him no matter what that he does. So there's really no way it could actually like really go down in a significant way.
Well, it's a funny thing to bring up, because as we all know, in American politics, it doesn't really matter what the people want.
No.
Like some insane percent, 70+% of Americans think we should all have health care, and that shit has still not happened, and that's been since the Hillary Clinton days. I mean, it's grown from, it wasn't quite as high back in the 90s, but overwhelmingly there are many things that the American people want and they do not receive. So I don't understand how like disliking Trump changes anything. I don't understand how liking Trump changes anything. It's kind of my key problem. I don't understand how Trump changes anything, because he so far hasn't. He just he like comes out and says, I'm gonna do a thing, and then a rich guy talks to him, then he doesn't. Art of the deal.
Well, that's exactly art of the deal. That's what's been going on both terms. People acted like this was a whole new animal. It's not. We've said this a million times. He wants to do something crazy. He tweets or he socials about it. I don't know what the hell you call it. Socials. And then he's like, I'm going to do something nuts. And then his cabinet and people that are also nuts around him are like, maybe you
is the
can't
gold
do
in
that
Fort Knox? He said he was going
You're
to
gonna
check
get
on
screwed
it.
out the ass if you do that. And he's like, come on. And they're like, no. And he's like, come on. And they're like, no. And then he was like, fine. And then he moves on to some other thing because he gets bored. So
I was told he was going to
spoiled
have Liz
emperor.
Cheney executed by firing squad. That's what they were saying. I
Right?
feel betrayed. Where's that shit?
Yeah, and then there's the whole bring him back Columbus Day. Have a good time, bud.
I forgot about
Like, all right.
They did
And then
Columbus
the
Day.
truck drivers must speak English. Those are a couple things that happen. Like, okay, like that makes total sense. Like, what you throw darts at the wall on that one? So, that's where we are today, and it's mostly to cover up his abject failures with the trade war that he started. China won, America 0 on that one. So that's where we are basically, like in terms of current situations. And then what Jared's going to bring us today is going to really kind of tie that in a historical aspect and how that kind of relates to now, because the book was written when it was the 70s, correct?
Super Imperialism was originally written in the 70s, like right as we were going off of the gold standard, and it has had this is the third edition. In the intro, which I won't read you the whole forward to, but Michael Hudson himself, he's like, yeah, that original edition was like barely like legible. I didn't like it. And then the second edition was okay. And then the third edition, the one that we have now, I think it came published in 2021.
Okay.
And it has like, that's actually what I'm going to read today is the added 2021 epilogue, because it does such a good job of just summarizing this entire 430
so it's been perpetually updated then to stick
it's only
with
3 over 30 years, which for academic texts is relatively conservative. And this one was redone because a whole lot of Chinese people wanted him to redo. He's going, I need to thank blank, 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 and blank, and they're all Chinese names from the Shanghai Institute of blah, blah, blah. Like, they found this book, and they're like, this book is great. We need to work with Michael and have him updated, I guess.
Right. And yeah, it makes sense. And it also ties in because imperialism just isn't just economics. That's just, how they do their things. We know without having to even get conspiratorial that America basically like runs the CIA as like just a cabal of people that decide, to make money off of drugs and war, and that's how we get here. So that's why we don't have healthcare, because they need to make money off of drugs and war. So that's basically what the situation is. And a quick note, which we'll probably take a dive into this here coming up soon, because we went from talking a lot about Israel Palestine, and but kind of things went into a holding pattern where there really wasn't much new information to report. But we'll dive into this probably in the next episode or two. But it just came out. I don't know if you heard this one, but stop me if you heard this one about
the timings when Nicolette's internet goes down are so bad. It just came out. What?
Well, the internet, is always going to be fucked, but that's part of the American imperialism too, to make sure that we can't have functioning things. But it just came out that to the surprise of no one, that the Biden admin actually did nothing to try to bring on a ceasefire or even a slow fire. They were like, here, when he said open up the floodgates and give them all the ammo that they need to Israel. I think that was pretty clear that he was not going to be like, I take it back. You should not.
Ben Gravier or one of those psychos where they're like, God did something for us by having President Biden be in office at that time, because at no point did he come to us like, you have to do a ceasefire, and I'm grateful for that, I think is a paraphrasing of the quote.
Right. Yeah, something to that effect. So we've got some other things planned for you today, but we will get to that. We just want to let you know, like we haven't, lost interest or anything. Like we'll get there now that there's new information. We'll probably take a deep dive into what's been going on as things have been going on. We also wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the very confusing, well, I guess maybe not so confusing, but semi-confusing story of the saga of Virginia Giuffre, who is now passed away, who was one of Epstein's most vocal, Jeffrey Epstein's most vocal whistleblowers, I guess you might say. She named names. She was the one that was in a photograph with Prince Andrew while she was a teenager. A victimized top.
I want to call today's theme is essentially like all facts and no facts, because we have one. Me reading from this book is just very much dry factual information. Hooray, academic book. This thing is nobody knows anything, and anything you're hearing from us or anyone else, you should entirely. This is like just after a mass shooting type.
Speculation.
Information is flying everywhere. What's relevant? What isn't? What's even true? Take everything with a grain of salt, including everything that we're going to talk about. But I do want to go over the general vague. here's all the weird stuff. How do we fit all this together in a way that makes some kind of sense?
We are absolutely not journalists. So let's be clear about that. I've had some journalistic training, but I'm not a journalist. I don't want to be a journalist. There are professional independent journalists out there who are doing a great job with, the whole boots on the ground thing and FOIA acts and all kinds of things. So listen to them if you want to, have stories broken for you. If you want to hear assholes talk about it, then that's us. So that's where we are at this stage. We are commentators. We're people who are mad as hell and aren't going to take it anymore, essentially. So that's why we are here, and that's what we do. So we know we don't have any facts that anybody else doesn't have.
That's kind of the point of this is no one seems to have like
a full picture.
A bunch of things that are definitely true, things that are facts are floating around, and it seems like always in these kinds of situations where it's like we're being told to just shut up, just don't even don't think about that.
Don't think about it,
because we are doing this because it's tabloid things. This is coming right after Trump fake released the Epstein documents. They had one of his people get up there and do a freaking goofy movie trailer of I have these folders, and then they brought out the folders
out with those folders and weirdly big smiles on their faces.
And it was not the folders full of the information we were requesting.
Absolutely
which are
not.
clients.
They were probably empty, and people in the inside said those folders were empty. Like that time in his last administration where he was standing in front of a table full of files, it was just blank papers.
Empty.
You'd say this is smoke and mirrors, but it's just stupid.
They didn't even get the smoke. They just
he's not hiding anything. There's nothing there. And if let's say there were any print offs in that information, all that they would be referring to are the flight logs, Epstein flight logs, and that again is not something that we can't tell you for fact. The flight logs are not the same as the attendees of the island because you get this with people that have their own personal or so rich they have their own kind of airlines or their own airplanes. Other people hitch rides. Very, very typical. Taylor Swift gets heat for this all the time. She's like, I don't just fly my jet to the corner store, guys.
Other people are using my plane.
So the names that you have already seen on the flight logs are not the same people necessarily who visited or frequented or patronized or deal made to go to the island situation. But she did, Virginia Giuffre did name some names, and we were talking about that a little bit before the show. I was like, well, we all assumed that she was going to end up suicided, but why now? I had thought she had named all the names. Apparently not. Apparently there are still some people, including what is presumed to be a U.S. president, and giving the time frame, we're very much likely talking about Clinton or Trump. Because again, on the flight logs, Barack Obama took rides on the flights. And I don't for a second, I've got a lot of problems with Barack, but I don't for a second think that he was involved in that. That's just where I come from. I'm not gonna sit here and defend and whatever all these rich wealthy people, but I really don't buy that he would have been someone involved in that. So we'll get to that. We're gonna get to all that. That's just kind of where we are. And we've got shout out to the chat. Hey to Are You Time Traveler 2, one of our regular viewers, who also asks us, can you name some trusted boots on the ground journalists to follow? Well, one thing about that is that people like their own people. So some people will hate other people or like other people or accuse other people of being this, that, and the other. So you kind of got to make your own mind up for it. Somebody I like that a lot of people really hate is Ken Klippenstein, just because he's really annoying to a lot of people in power. He really just annoys them, and people come to him and tell him things privately because he's so annoying to them, to the establishment. So, and he's busted a lot of big stories. So for me, I take what he has to say usually pretty seriously. He seems to know stuff before other people and has good sources. So that's one for me.
It's really hard to recommend anybody because over time, eventually they will. I don't say this as everyone is horrible and that we're just terrible humans are evil and we all should just. But if you follow somebody long enough, they're going to be wrong about something or another.
And they'll eventually turn insane into Batman villains anyway because the job is hard.
Like you follow, I don't know, just pull one out here. Like if you follow Democracy Now, if you look at Democracy Now's reporting in like the late '90s, like when they were first getting started, kind of like old Democracy Now with some good stuff. You look at their headlines and you're like, oh man, they're on these stories that like nobody else was on, and that's where you get your like, what is it, like Aaron Mates and Max Blumenthal's who have now become the Gray Zone. Why? Because other people from Democracy Now, Ben Norton, hated the shit out of them, and they like were writing stories about, oh, this guy's blah blah blah, and like almost get like not almost rising above like petty high school bickering to lawsuits and maybe getting people fucked up in foreign countries where they're doing like, you know, foreign journalism, etc.
Right.
With I know that Mate and Max have both been to I don't know specifically Gaza Palace. They've gone to Israel in that area and checked out what they can check out.
Yeah.
You know, and they're one of the journalists that didn't get exploded.
And they do take
but even then,
too. Yeah.
There's things that were freaking Aaron that I do not agree on. Like him and Max both have weird stances on China, and that's kind of what it becomes. Is you find a good journalist for a thing,
Yeah.
and they aren't necessarily great for everything.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
they need to have, okay, he's good on this particular beat, but if you go to something else, I don't know. You'll see people making like weird backpedaling things, and I like to be charitable and chalk that up to just they don't know. It's like, oh, that's not their area, so they don't know as much, so they do worse reporting.
Especially if they're independent, they're doing the work themselves. They don't necessarily have access to everything, everywhere, all the time. And like they might have when they worked at a media group. A lot of these people are exiles. What was Klippenstein used to work for? It starts with an I. I can't think what it's called now. I keep trying to say Imperial, but it's not. But it's sometimes you worked for an outlet that starts with an I, and I can't think what it's called all of a sudden. But
Intercept.
Intercept, yeah, and then he got ousted from that and then went solo. And then when they go solo,
you were talking about a frickin' Brazil guy. What's his name? He lives in Brazil now, but he's not Brazilian. He's very stereotypically effeminate white gay man. Glenn Greenwald, yeah. Greenwald.
Yeah.
Glenn Greenwald kicks ass on most things. Again, not everything,
right?
But a lot of stuff he's really, really good on. And you know he's good because he got kicked out of his own country for doing such good.
Yeah, he's pretty good. People like Chris Hedges a lot to hear what he's got to say. I don't know if he's journalist or commentator necessarily, but
Chris Hedges is a dangerous Trotskyist. You should never listen to what he says. Okay.
That's kind of my point. It's like it depends on what you're trying to hear and when you're trying to hear it. If it's a breaking news thing, pretty much all of the indie journalists, are working to break stories. So it's like, okay, good, you did your thing, whatever. But when it comes to their opinions, that's where you should kind of grain of salt it a little bit there.
I'm trying to trust randos more than it's really it's the negative space of if they're being certified by this is a CNN approved journalist, it's like be really suspicious. This is a New York Times or Washington Post approved.
Yeah.
The more quote legit they are in the eyes of the government, the less legit I assume that they are. If you are one of those legit journalists, like a Sylvester Hirsch, Cy Hirsch, guy who made his name back in the freaking Vietnam War, exposing stuff, investigative journalist, arguably one of the best living journalists that we got right now. He suddenly cannot get published in the New York Times, Washington Post, blah 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 blah. And now I super trust him. Like everything he says, I'm like, wait a second, I'm going to assume true and investigate where most I assume false. And then
if the Imperium will not, if the Imperium will not allow them to be
if you already proved you know what you're doing, and then suddenly they're trying to act like you don't know what you're doing for no reason, it's like, oh, okay, he must have figured something out. Sylvester Hirsch, he stopped getting published in the big papers after the stories he went after stopped being the kind of things that the big papers want to publish. For instance, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. He wrote a big paper about that breaks down a version of what probably could have happened, and in this case, I trust his investigative journalism because he has proven himself to do exactly these kinds of journalistic things in the past accurately and award-winningly. He got Pulitzers and all kinds of shit for this. He's part of how we got out of the Vietnam War. His reporting made people go, wait, what?
Wait a minute. Exactly. Well, to put a bow on this, because I know that Jared has some things he wants to get to.
Well, I want to pull up this article. We can go through the weird facts.
Well, the thing of it is that the just recently, the executive producer for 60 Minutes, who'd been there for 20 some odd years, resigned, saying that he could no longer. It was no longer tenable. So they're a mainstream news media source. So and then 60 Minutes actually addressed it, and what they said is that more so than have ever been before being part of the arm of the Imperium, the voice of the Imperium, that they right now Paramount, who is BS's parent company is trying to get a merger done, who they need approval for from the Trump administration. So they're really kissing his ass hardcore, more so than maybe before. So that's where all this huge journalism comes from. We know they took back stories that they did. They're like takesy backsies about, Palestine and stuff like that earlier, like last year. So there's a lot of problems with journalistic integrity at this time, unsurprisingly. But to close the subject, look for people who you like what they have to say about maybe facts or breaking news, but when they start to get in their opinion section kind of thing, then maybe just use them for what is happening, and instead of what they feel or believe, or that kind of thing. Okay, so I'm gonna quiet down here and let's turn things over to our own Mr. May Jared.
So I'm going to do like I was saying, this is not the no facts zone, but as close to that as we're getting here. This is the far less things are nailed down and we can talk about them with certainty. Yeah. But I want to go through the little list of like weirdnesses, why I think these are weird in the first place. Sorry, my screen share thing, it was perfect a second ago, and now it isn't. Let me see here. All right, let's stop my previous screen sharing and start a new one. Maybe that'll do it. Because I updated my OS and now how screen sharing even works changed. Now I click on a button. Yeah. Here it is. So this is the newest article about it. Basically pick this at random because I know it'll give me the same list of like stuff that happened that I want to kind of talk about a little bit. Yes. So we have, they got, Trump commented on it, I guess, and he just says, nothing. The whole situation, very sad. Her others, certainly that's a horrible thing. He's just like, all right, I got to say something to get this out of here. But yeah, this is Virginia. Virginia, she has her brief background is she was like sexually abused as a child, and then like when she was a mid to late teenager, this sounds so conspiracy-y, but it's just these aren't disputed facts. She was recruited at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's Florida mansion thing, golf resort, by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and of course, like they weren't there just because let's just look around Florida and find a random golf resort. No, they're friends with Trump and all the other rich people. It's a class thing. All the creepy eyes wide shut people were having a party, and Virginia's there for whatever reasons, because I think she also was like kind of tangentially near, like she had like rich parents or something. I don't know. But she gets picked up. She gets recruited. You say recruited as if it was like a voluntary thing. She was a child, and she was then.
I think you're groomed is kind of where that word gets kind of abused, but ultimately like enticed into believing that she had.
Ring, and that's.
Well, it's like enticed into believing that there was the position for her in some way, obviously lied to, because that's what happens to a lot of people who are lower profile. Like they're enticed into thinking they're going to get employment, and then they end up as being sex trafficked.
So this is not at Mar-a-Lago, but there's just a million pictures like this. Like here it is. Here's Virginia. Here's a really rich, powerful guy. This is the literal Duke of York. Yep. And there's Ghislaine. There's Maxwell. There we are. I wonder what was happening with these two. But and
if you notice in the photograph, he's got his hands on her in a kind of an intimate way.
Exactly.
In a sense, it's sort of an entitlement situation there. So it's that when that came out, and then knowing his background, people were really not surprised to hear any of this about him.
Is the Duke of York Prince Andrew? Is that the same guy?
Yes.
Like, that guy looks this guy becomes Prince Andrew. He looks too young in that photo to be as old as he was. All right.
Anyway. All those really like gross recessive genes. Like, it's the number, and then there it goes. But yes. Nobody was really surprised that he was involved with any of this, because he was really, there are certain people that just like aren't good at hiding it, don't bother to hide it. He'd always had this kind of fixation on like nubile, like young women. So it's not, that was never really a secret.
Epstein was originally, forget that Epstein had like 2 trials. He had this 2009 trial, which is where she first came forward, and she was one of the witnesses, and she testified, and blah blah blah. So yeah, that's part of the one of the things to consider with this whole suicide situation is like, why are they suiciding people after they've already testified? She's testified multiple times. I think she was in both cases. But yeah, in subsequent lawsuits, Gouffre said she was a spa attendant. Okay, that makes sense. A spa attendant at Mar-a-Lago, where she was approached in the year 2000 by Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, also the new theory is that Maxwell is actually the ringmaster, which is like, wow, she's alive, and Jeff Epstein died. I wonder if she was actually the one pulling strings here. She was hired as a masseuse for Epstein and was flown around the world for meetings at Epstein's behest while she was 17 and 18. Giuffre also sued Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, for allegedly sexually assault. This is how little I care about the royals. I didn't realize that same guy, of course. For allegedly sexually assaulting her when she was 17. The Duke denied the allegations, saying he had never met Giuffre. He paid millions to settle that lawsuit. Giuffre's family
like you do when you've never met someone.
Exactly, right?
So,
right? Hold on a second. I don't really want to show, like, fucking graphic photos. What is this photo?
Well, it was on the internet. Well, the thing of it is that's where things starts getting weird. Is because she knew what kind of trouble she was facing. I know a lot of the other accusers live in fear. The fact of it is that things got weird. Where it seemed like she had named pretty much all the names, but I guess there's there's some big legal entanglements with outing people, especially when it's really important people, because it wasn't just like these couple people. We're talking about like Israeli states people, we're talking about American states people, English states people with really high ranking positions in government, past and present. And what's that shitty disgusting lawyer, I can't think of his name, who is involved in all of this, little dude with the glasses. You know what I'm talking about? Like, what's his name? I can't think of his name.
I know the name. I don't remember I know the guy. I don't know the name.
I know it. I just can't think of what it is. Anyways, he was a patron or a frequenter of this, because this is not just like, this is a sex trafficking ring and that's all. No, this was like where deals were made, where discussions were made, where money changed hands. But also here, we also have this, we offer this, teenage sex service for you as well.
Yeah, the sex trade isn't the point. It's
exactly. It's a much broader.
Favors. That is the way. That is just like in the same way they're like, we're gonna get some drugs for the party. Like, it's just that kind of thing. It's not like you get into power to do the sex. You can be a creepy sex guy and have no power. That's
right. And they mostly were confined to the island, but she was ultimately kind of helped lure in other young vulnerable women, and then so this was sort of like a ring of people. It worked just like any other one that maybe not be as famous type of a thing. Where they really can't
get out of it. It's like the kind of shit you'd have going on at like your a local skeezy nightclub. It's just on such a scale that it's like the
a massage parlor, one of those, or where they where the immigrants get lured in for like house cleaning jobs. A lot of the house cleaning industries, you got to be really careful about, because what they do is they get them, they bring them in, they take their passports, their documents, any way to get anywhere, do anything, say anything, and essentially turn these people into working slaves, which again services the sex industry as well. It's just that the reason you've heard about this is because it's so notable.
It shocks the conscious when people hear about this. They're like, "Oh my god!" Like, people pay attention, even though, these same people make decisions and sign papers that ends in hundreds, thousands, millions of deaths sometimes, and that gets far less attention than something like this, because it's so much more personal.
Things got really weird. Like, we were like, okay, like she is kind of a champion for like the human rights movement, like these kind of and we're like, okay, she stood up, she's the face of it. Other people weren't as vocal as she was, so kind of like putting herself out there, like, we kind of know where this is going to go. But then things got weird, because then comes out this story about that she was hit by a bus, and
we have this sequence where near the last like month or so, couple of months of her life, is you're not here and talking to people who know her, like she's having a hard time she's just having a hard time based on like the life she had before this. She has some kind of she has various pills problems, etc. She had a highly traumatic past, and now she's like doing her best now as an adult to deal with all this nonsense.
She had dealing with therapy and that kind of thing.
She's not.
But one very important point is that she said, more than one time, she made it public. She said that she told therapists and doctors that if anything happened to her, it was not suicide. She was not suicidal in any way. She would not kill herself, this, that, and the other. Of course, people still can go backsies on that, of course. But I think that we all kind of
many
saw
times
it coming.
Publicly and
it's confusing after the bus thing. The bus thing, she comes out, she's all beat up in pictures, says she's hit by a bus, and the damage to her organs was so extensive, she only had 3-4 days to live.
So she's living in Australia, and she's from California. That's like the first thing you have to keep in mind here. She's living in Australia. She got probably everything is so effing vague about this, and it's been like weeks now, and it's still not more
There should be
clarified. But
videos, like just street cam, like like.
she was in not in a bus accident. She was in a car, and a bus hit the car she was in. So it's not like she was hit directly by the bus. It's not like she hit the bus.
But again, that
sounds
wasn't
like
very clear. It was just hit by a bus, and we're like, what the hell does that mean?
Well, it was the kind of, because you hear that, like, oh my god, some horrible. It's like, no. This was the level of accident that it was reported the next day by like the bus driver and them. Like it was just like bonk. Oh shit, sorry. Like it was. This wasn't like everyone went to the hospital, dozens, in critical condition, etc. It was like a relatively minor car accident, apparently.
Right,
but then if you listen to her, she's like, oh, this bus was going super fast. And then the reasonable explanation I've heard from that is no. She had renal failure, kidney problems before because of the pills and the just her life ahead of time.
Self-medicated potentially as well. Yes.
And then when they went to the hospital, they discovered these issues. And then when she's talking about how she then is posting online saying, I have 4 days to live because I have this renal failure, which is the bottom line of what's on the screen right now here. In March, she made headlines after being taken to the hospital following a car crash. She claimed she was in, like how quick and vague that sentence is. Taken to the hospital following a car crash. That's about as detailed as we had. We know it was a school bus, meaning there was a lot of people around.
There's really no clarity on that. And that confused everyone.
And they say that, well, she was probably getting online saying she had 4 days to live, not because she even necessarily had only 4 days to live, but she hadn't seen her kids in forever, and she's going through this divorce, and she was trying to like guilt her family into coming and do like just very sad personal familial shit.
But they also benefit from making her seem crazy and unhinged.
Exactly. And
so you don't know the truth on this.
Even if she did, and even is suicide, took too many pills, and was found later on her carpet, like
accidental overdose.
Was it an OD? And even then, if she is taking all these pills because her life was so fucked up, and then the feds are fucking with her and they're making her life worse on purpose, how is that not killing her?
Yeah, even exactly.
Even if no one put a gun to her head, if they create conditions in which she dies.
And don't forget that the FBI used to send like letters to Martin Luther King Jr. like every week or every day, telling him to kill himself.
Kill yourself, dude, bro. Kill yourself. You cheated on your wife, and we know about it. Kill yourself.
Yeah, right. Like, you suck pretty big, so you should kill yourself. So it's not. That's exactly the same thing. Like, how is not constantly dogging her and following her and making her life hard, and you drive somebody crazy, making it look like your house got broke into, that you're being watched, people are looking at you all the time, and obviously she didn't feel safe in America, so she goes to another country. I wouldn't recommend going to Australia if you didn't feel safe.
I would stay inside, because once you're out of the country they can do weird shit. When you're in here they have to at least remove you to fucking El Salvador.
Yeah. So that's what made the story kind of strange. I think we all anticipated she was going to like get suicided, like just as the same way that Epstein allegedly did. I say allegedly because there's really.
Or you got to go live in Russia, which is what a bunch of people do once they realize they piss off the empire. That's where Tara Reid lives right now. That's Joe Biden's rapist
you
accuser.
Have some relative cover because
Russia's not going to send you back. Russia's not going to be like, extradite.
Russia will be like, ha 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 ha, and then they will kind of watch out for you. So.
And yes, I'm sure Russia wants you to give them some spy shit also, but like, come on, we're adults here, right? We understand this is the real world.
Yeah. In any case, she goes on for whatever reason, personal, both, harassment, a drug addiction, alcohol addiction, whatever. It's unclear. So she goes on and says, I got 4 days to live. And then about a month later, now she's found dead in Australia. So
and even then, it just says like suicide. It doesn't say. There's no specifics.
Right. Exactly.
And the only reason we don't care because we're fucking TMZ. We care because why is this lady right after our president, who campaigned on things like releasing, quote, the Epstein files, whatever that even is supposed to mean. Same thing with like RFK. We're going to do the JFK files. Everything's going to come out. And then a month after that doesn't happen, they do the fake release of the Epstein files. The most vocal, most known accuser is no longer breathing. Right. Like, isn't this all weird, right? Because even if it isn't a suicide, we still have this freaking ring of criminals that for some reason we are not allowed to know the list of clients because of national security. So people are in jail over it already. There is no doubt about the existence of this shit, how long it went on, who did it, et cetera, where it happened. We have all the facts, but we must contain the list of clients for national security reasons. That's the only reason I'm talking about this shit.
Yeah, it's a rat fuck essentially, because it's fake. the stories around that are fake. It involves mainstream empower people right now, not just the United States. And then it's, again, they could care less about these women and their lives and the quality of their lives and what they did to them. They're just kind of caught in the crosshair of much bigger deals being done, of large sums of money changing hands for laundering purposes, purchasing it on different things. This is where, policies were talked about and things like that. It was a much bigger situation. So potentially she may have known a lot more in terms of like state secret type of situations that would have helped. But this is also to say that like the unnamed people, which it supposedly includes a U.S. president, that she didn't pass that information along to a lawyer or someone else. So presumably other people, she did tell this information to. So it's not like it dies with her necessarily. We just got to wait for someone to come forward, whether it's kind of like a deep throat situation where it's like secretly to journalists that blow the whistle, or someone bravely steps forward. Remains to be seen. And that kind of leaves us on a cliffhanger about this. And again, we're not interested in this because we're, delighting at the espionage and the TMZ of it all. But because this really is a national security situation in the way that, how deep does it go? What were these situations happening beyond just the trafficking? What does it entail?
That is a wonderful transition if you want to go into super imperialism, which is if the illegal, horrible sexual activity is the
Not
party
enough.
favor of of what the meeting, like what is the actual meeting about, like what are the meetings that are going on when this kind of stuff is going on. And I will argue that it is the types of meetings that end up in that create the economic conditions that we live in today. There do have to be some guys who get in a room and sign some paperwork, and it turns out that a lot of them want a creepy child sex slave also. But the reason they come to these rooms are to affect economic policy. So like this is chapter 17. This is an added in 2021 in the third edition, the one that's currently out. This is a book written in 1970, the very early 70s, right as we were going off of the gold standard, by Michael Hudson. Michael Hudson, American economist, still living, and he does not subscribe to the model of economic study I keep talking about, which is where you study a perfect ideal of an economy. He is about studying the actual economy. So this end chapter summarizes about 430 pages of stuff beforehand. So if it seems like he's summarizing and glossing over stuff, that's what the whole previous like many chapters was about, and I highly encourage you to read it. I don't even want to say like, oh, it's real boring, but you can get through it. I find it devastatingly interesting. It's just occasionally I gotta read a couple of paragraphs a couple times over to be like, wait a second, what were all those words?
Make sure you,
I don't
big
read a lot
words.
of economic. All right, settling. I'm going to read for a little bit here. The ending of super imperialism. This is written in 2021, so 30 years after most of the rest of the book. A century of European economic rivalry, but relative peace, lasted from the end of the Napoleonic Wars in 1815 to World War I in 1914. That gave way to the, quote, long 20th century, often called the American century, characterized by U.S. economic strength domestically and by its military power capped by its international financial dominance. This dominance started with World War I's intergovernment debt legacy, followed by America's debt diplomacy since World War II, and is ending in today's looming new Cold War, 1921 to 2021. Remember, World War I, we entered kind of late. We didn't want to be a part of it, and then we started handing out, quote, loans, and then we still, to this day, technically have on the books World War I loans that, like, Italy and France and them and England owe to us. And that's how this shit all started. Like an insane landlord who you owe me $20 and just chases you for the rest of your life for it. That's the beginning of how we got. In 1921, the United States demanded that its allies pay for the arms and munitions that they had brought prior to America's entry into the Great War, World War I. The allies wanted these debts treated as contributions to a common cause and forgiven, but agreed to pay out of the reparations they imposed on Germany. The resulting debt burden plunged America as well as Europe into depression by 1931, leading to the Great Depression even, leading into World War II. And as that war was ending in 1945, U.S. diplomats again used their nation's near monopoly on gold and its dominant creditor position to dictate the rules of post-war trade and finance along lines that promoted the nation's self-interest and enhanced its economic dominance. Like, as you would, by the way, I'm not saying this is crazy illogical, like someone had a crazy super villain plan. This is just the United States acted in its best interest consistently for many, many years and is now at the top of the heap. U.S. diplomats again, I said that. What reversed America's creditor leverage was its overseas military spending deemed necessary to enforce this dominance. From the Korean War in 1950 through the Vietnam War, deepening U.S. balance of payments deficits drained the Treasury's gold reserves. That's when he talks about going to see if the gold is still there. There was a high fucking chance that it literally isn't. Not that that matters to me, but like, doesn't that mean something? Like, hey, the whole world's economy based on us owning this gold that we don't actually own because we fucking sold it to all these other countries because we lied to them about having it, so we then give it to this guy who thought we had it. We did a fucking Ponzi scheme with gold for like 60 years, and that's why I want him to go to Fort Knox, do that shit. It'd be so funny. You're gonna walk in, it's gonna be an empty room, and we're gonna be like, oh my god. What happens? It's gonna be like that scene in Rick and Morty where they're just like, oh, I can do that for money. It's like, who's paying me to do that? And the entire like government collapses in 1 second. There's no money. All right. Even as the United States became the world's largest official debtor, it persuaded Europe, the Near East, and East Asia not to use their own creditor positions to create an alternative to America's regime of special trade and monetary favoritism. The ensuing half-century, from 71 to 2021, has seen foreign leaders subordinate their country's national self-interest to finance an increasingly indebted United States by investing their growth in international reserves in U.S. Treasury IOUs. That's back to that chart where we made up the fake percentages because they don't actually use their money to strengthen their own shit. They pay it back to us because we highly encourage them to do that. And now after years and years, Trump's like, what the fuck is going on? It's like, dude, this has been our whole policy. For 100 years, we've been building this house of cards.
Yeah.
Today's basic conflict.
Loan sharking on the biggest possible scale.
Yes, it is just the same. It's the same as having a fucking slumlord over your house, but it's the U.S. and you're like Greece.
Yeah.
Instead of just like
the economy collapses like every other week.
China today is following a similar industrial strategy to that which the United States and Germany followed in the late 19th century, so late 1800s. The common logic is for public investment in infrastructure to provide basic services at subsidized prices to lower the cost of living and doing business, while spending on social welfare to raise the educational, health, and productivity levels of the population at large. Since the 1980s, the U.S. IMF and World Bank have followed the opposite philosophy, using financial leverage to force debtor countries to pay foreign banks and bondholders by selling off their public infrastructure to be privatized into rent-extracting monopolies. The effect has been to increase costs for transportation, communications, and other basic utilities, which does not help debtor economies recover. The United States itself has adopted this privatization policy at home, posing the question of whether it, or any economy, can live by replacing public infrastructure with corporate rent-seeking, increasing the cost of living by privatizing markets for basic needs, and allowing finance, insurance, and real estate, or the FIRE, finance capital sector, to inflate housing, healthcare, and education costs by an exponential growth of debt. These increases in the cost of living and doing business have made the U.S. economy uncompetitive in world markets, except for the arms industry, agriculture, a bit declining, and intellectual property rights in information technology, pharmaceutical monopolies, and entertainment. The combination of privatization, financialization, and rent-seeking has counterposed America's neoliberal economic philosophy to the now old-fashioned industrial policy favoring mixed economies subsidized by public infrastructure investment. The former track polarizes income and wealth. The latter promotes broadly based prosperity, but calls for nations to act more independently and resist U.S. demands to privatize and financialize infrastructure into debt-financed, rent-seeking monopolies. The attempted TPP and TTIP corporate power grab. Regaining the presidency and Congress under Barack Obama, 2009 to 16, the Democrats proposed two neoliberal trade agreements, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, we're getting to stuff I remember now, and the Trans-Pacific Pipeline, not Pipeline, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership with Europe. Both treaties, this was Hillary Clinton trying to get elected, if you remember this. Both treaties to court. Oh, hold on. I forgot. This is the thing where it has 2 pages, but they're side by side like this. So I have to go over here. Included a radical proposal to limit the power of governments to enact regulations that might impair the profits of foreign investors. From the U.S. vantage point, this would maximize the remission of profits by U.S. and other multinational firms, which were to be freed from any liability for having damaged public health, welfare, or the environment. Investor-state dispute settlements, tribunals, were to be created, empowered to order governments to make full 100% restitution to companies that were charged penalties for pollution or whose profits were reduced by any other regulations deemed to be in public interest. So this didn't happen because the TPP got fucking canceled, partially by Trump. Trump ran out there, this thing sucks, the TPP is bullshit. And we're like, oh fuck, he's right though. Like,
even though he has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. Yeah.
Somebody got in his ear and told him it's bad though, and that person was right. And not for these reasons, not for these like altruistic the reasons I would be like, it's freaking ghastly. If you hear what I just read, that's if an American company fucks up your country, not America, and then your country sues that company and like extracts money from them, well, you're going to get sent to the ISDS, which is a tribunal created to empower governments to make full 100% restitution to companies that were charged penalties for pollution. See what I'm saying? You can go to fucking Greenland, blow up an iceberg or whatever, like something important, and then like burn down a forest or 5, and then if they are like, hey, we have to charge you for that shit you did, America could be like, oh no.
No, you don't. Yeah, no, it's a racket, of course. Like,
and if you don't, we bomb you. Like,
yeah, and it just goes to show how deep all of this stuff goes when it comes to extracting wealth from and power, and literally super imperialism, where you make it sure that these other countries have no way of empowering themselves on the global scale.
Or ourselves. Remember the Gulf of Mexico freaking oil spill that lasted for like a month? The states can't like sue that company over it because of how our shit works. Like you can't, Georgia or whatever coast can't be like, you owe us, you ruined our entire coastline for like a decade plus.
Which they did try to, be like, made the point like several times. They're like,
they made some commercials.
Literally trashed our shit. And they're like, haha, don't care.
And there's legally, there's no recourse. You're like, why don't these countries go after these companies? They legally can't, and that's the point of the gigantic U.S. military. If you try to stand up to any of this, you're going down. Like it doesn't. You're going to get Muammar Gaddafi'd. You're going to.
Right. Yes.
Despite oil spills and other environmental damage, global warming, and monopolistic anti-consumer behavior, governments were to compensate foreign companies for whatever profits they might claim to have lost as a result of public environmental, economic, and social regulations. ISDS judges were to be, I'm glad it's like the hypothetical were to be, this didn't actually pass, but like this was what we were planning. This is what Obama, progressive socialist Obama, was planning and wanted to put into effect. Despite oil spills and other environmental damage, ISDS judges were to be corporate appointees to make sure that to make sure that corporate interests would be given priority over those of governments, without concern for economy-wide consequences of the corporation's socially and economically destructive behavior. A group formed to counter these proposals, exposethetpp.org, cited you should go to that website, see if it's still there, cited the economist Susan George's description of the ISDS Investment Tribunal as a sophisticated, toxic, U.S.-led corporate racket, a concerted assault against the spectrum from the environmental and animal welfare to labor rights. The group noted, even when the governments win, they often must pay for tribunals' cost and legal fees, which average $8 million per case. Some of the investor-state attacks now underway are Chevron trying to invade liability for its Ecuadorian Amazon toxic contamination. All right. Philip Morris attacking Australia's cigarette labeling policy. Oh, because in Australia the packages are white with black text and pictures of death on them. Like there's no logo even. It is, quote, plain packaging laws. I know about that. Eli Lilly, is that more cigarettes? Attacking Canada's drug patent policy. Awesome. And European firms attacking Egypt's post-revolution minimum wage increase.
And this goes back to what we were talking about last week in where people fought for corporations to have the rights of people to evade free speech, to evade consequence. This is what that is. This is what happens when that happens, when you allow corporations rights.
This is why I laugh when people talk about voting our way out of this shit. It's like, oh, you just got to vote for the right guy. I'm like, you child.
You can't. It's not. There's a saying that goes...
Who's Ecuador supposed to vote for? to fix
Yeah,
this?
right.
Who are you supposed to vote for in Europe that's going to fix
Or
fucking...
here. Like, no, they're all part of this because this is something that was established by people who were writing the rules. And when they wrote the rules, they
That no
made
one votes
sure
for.
there weren't, like a guy can come in and be like, I'm not doing this, and then it's over. That's not how it works. It's so tightly woven in horror and imperialisms that like there are no gaps. Imagine if you took all of the smartest people in the world and made a council of evil. That's America. Like that's what you get. Like we have a history of doing that in every way possible because maybe somebody did find a loophole and then they write that loophole out, and that's how we get to the present day where corporations have rights.
If you're sitting here saying we need to take our country back, I agree, but you need to realize who we need to take it back from. If you're Australian, you're not trying to take your country back from the Chinese and Indonesians and Aboriginals. You're trying to take it back from fucking Philip Morris, apparently.
Yes.
If you're Canadian, you're trying to take your country back from Eli Lilly.
Yes.
If you're American, you're trying to take your country back from all these fuckers because they're all just here. Like, it's
horrible. Yeah. And they dictate our policy, the end, like point blank. That's
Yes.
it. That's something that started in the Reagan administration and has just gone into turbo mode, 40 some years later, because that's where we are now. Corporations do have rights. They do get to pay off politicians. There are no campaign finance laws anymore. Everything is just completely pedal to the metal at this point, and nothing you can do as a citizen in any way, shape, or form, nothing we're doing here, nothing anybody can do will change any of this because it's not possible at this point. Until there's some sort of actual collapse of some kind, there is no changing it. Voting's not going to do that. And there's a saying that goes, if voting could do anything, they'd make it illegal. It's just a sham. It's just for your benefit to make you feel like you participated in something. Anyways, please continue.
A Financial Times summary reported, this is just on America now, I assume, anti-fracking activists say such a mechanism would allow oil companies to sue local authorities for imposing strict environmental guidelines. Which is to say, even if you and your town voted for these specific guidelines, if XY company gets in there, they can just sue your town and just do it anyway. Canada has raised concerns that cigarette companies could use the provision to take governments to court over anti-tobacco regulations. The proposed ISDS tribunals would handcuff governments from regulating health standards and consumer safety, fining polluters and other environmental violators, and imposing new taxes on property or wealth. By blocking national authority to regulate economies, the TTP and TTIP would centralize economic policy in Wall Street and other financial centers, tying the hands of elected governments. And remember, the only reason we talk about Pepper, this didn't even happen. Why do we care? Because this was the lesser of two evils. This was the if you didn't get Trump, this is what we were gonna get. And it's like, oh, great, awesome. Like, I'm so glad that there are choices here. Like, the people you elect. I'm not gonna rant. I'm gonna read. This rear-heading of national and international law could roll back the West's long progressive democratic control these words, of national resources. As Lori Wallach summarized, corporations are empowered to drag a sovereign government to a tribunal of 3 private sector trade attorneys who rotate between being the attorneys for the corporations suing the governments and being the judges. No conflict of interest rules. For the United States itself, these 3 private corporate attorneys can order a government to pay our tax dollars in unlimited amounts to a foreign corporation because they think that our domestic environmental, land use, zoning, health, labor laws violate their new corporate rights in an agreement like TPP. I think they're Canadian is why they say some foreign things. I'm like, oh, the U.S. We're foreign. Other protests from the United States arose over the secretary with which President Obama wrapped his request for fast-track authority for the largely secret trade and investment deal. By spring 2015, Yves Smith wrote on Naked Capitalism, alarm was spread by a well-timed joint publication by WikiLeaks and the New York Times. Goddamn, Julian Assange again. High five. God,
right?
Wow, he's just always there doing good guy shit. A recent version of the journalists you can probably trust. That guy, I was told for so long that he's not a journalist, and then I looked back and I'm like, oh no, he's a journalist. He did journalism all the fucking time. What are we even talking about? It's like psychopath and shitty father, Julian Assange. Then you look into him for 5 seconds. You're like, oh, that's why they don't like him. I understand. They stopped shit like this, kind of. He didn't like run out and stop it with a bomb. He just like, here's what it is. Here's what
make of it what you will.
Here's what the text is if you want to read it. Oh yeah, this allows companies to just legally supersede elected governments, just boom, not through any trickery, just on its face. That's just in the official rule book now, if we let this pass. While the official trade... this is... God, I just remember this. Legislators had to read the text in a closed room in an eyes-only basis without being allowed to take notes, and were prohibited from proposing any amendments to soften the text. So WikiLeaks putting the text out there was more than your fucking senators were allowed to see from this. More than your elected actual representatives. How does all this stuff get passed through with all these good people we keep electing? Well, they'll do this to them if they really don't want them to, like, know what's in it or understand what the text actually is.
And that's FYI, if you're worried and you're leaning towards this Bernie AOC support the Dems thing, they're going to abide by all of this
Dems
too.
Even harder next time.
Yeah, even worse next time. Exactly. Because any kind of little loopholes close even further. The longer that they go.
Bernie said today that he wants a strong Democrat and Republican Party, which is a thing that Nancy Pelosi said, and we all made fun of her for. But now he's
Democrats always say that. You ever heard a Republican say that shit? Give me a fucking break.
While the U.S. Trade Representative, USTR, technically allows access, in practice, that right is empty, okay? The congressman himself must read the text. This is now quotes. Okay. No sending staffers or bringing experts, because remember, the people you elect don't actually fucking know anything. They need a team around them that kind of knows
they have
stuff.
no idea what they're doing. That's why they've got 25-year-olds sitting around them to explain shit.
No sending staffers or bringing experts, and only staffers from the committees with direct oversight of trade bills, the Senate Finance Committee and House Ways and Means Committee, are allowed to join their bosses. The USTR insists, oh my god, think right now before I turn the page, what's the craziest shit they could impose to, like, let you even read a bill you're supposed to vote on that will have enormous consequences for the entire world's economy? Let's see, okay. They have to specify what chapter he wants to review in advance. The USTR then insists that the negotiator of those chapters be present. Since those negotiators travel, it usually takes 3 or 4 weeks to even get a convenient time. But when they say the negotiators, they mean the corporate lobbyists who made that thing a thing have to be there to just bury you, to try and, like, oh, you think this is bad? Shh. We're just going to inject this shit right into your face. And these are weak-willed dumbasses who we, like, vote. Remember, I consider these, like, American Idol rejects. That's how you get voted into office, because you're the American Idol winner.
Lobbyists become lobbyists because it is, like, something that, these people can excel at. And
if you're a good politician, you get to be a lobbyist.
Exactly. Like, a lot of the time politicians have legal backgrounds, so it's like they come at it from all sides, and that's what makes a good lobbyist. And you will never defeat lobbying unless somehow, some way, and it won't happen, lobbying was made illegal, like, they control what happens. Are you there? Did you lose me?
Yeah, I did. I gave it a beat to see if you came back.
Okay, I can see me.
All right, countries rejecting this attack on national sovereignty were to be isolated by trade and financial sanctions, like what we do with Cuba and Russia and Iran. U.S. diplomats assumed that this threat would enable the U.S. to repeat the degree of control that it had achieved after World War II, when Europe was hardly in a position to, quote, go it alone. And as indicated above, an unstated byproduct of the TTP and TTIP would be to help the U.S. balance of payments by maximizing the remission of profits of U.S. and other foreign investors. But the United States is no longer the essential nation in the face of its chronic balance of payments deficits and its military and trade policy demands on its allies. Many nations are seeing their trade and investment opportunities to lie more with China, Russia, and other countries growing faster than the United States, yet which the U.S. diplomacy treats as enemies. Donald Trump won the 2016 presidential election in large part by opposing the TPP and promising to replace free trade with protectionism. He carried the flyover states, America's Rust Belt of closed-down factories, whose voters believed that only a radical outsider could revive industrial development. His Democratic Party opponent, Hillary Clinton, had been a cheerleader for the TPP, and despite her claims that she no longer supported it, few voters believed that she was sincere, especially after she dismissed Trump supporters as deplorables. What Trump opposed in the TPP was not its pro-corporate ISDS, dismantling public regulatory authority, was the program of his own Republican administration after all. But see, Michael Hudson's fucking great, because you'll be reading this, you'll be like, oh, I see, he's just this right-wing blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, oh, okay, never mind. Oh, I see, he's just this left-wing blah. Oh, okay, never mind. Like, kind of like the documentary we were watching. All right. What Trump opposed was not that. That was like the Republicans' idea after all. But seeing that there was no way for the United States to compete internationally under free trade rules, he blamed the nation's deindustrialization largely on the free trade policies of the Clinton and Obama administrations. How could the United States compete in industrial manufacturing under free trade conditions, given the high cost of its labor force had to pay each month? Obamacare had increased the cost of health insurance, drugs, medical care to 18% of U.S. GDP. The Federal Housing Authority guaranteed bank mortgages absorbing up to 43% of the home buyer's income, and most Americans were deeply in debt. See, Michael Hudson would say, if you're going to make a loan where it costs 43% of the guy's income to pay it, that's a bad loan. Don't make that loan. Which opens up a whole thing. Well, how does he get a house? Trump withdrew America from the TPP and from the TTIP negotiations still underway, and promised to revive industry by imposing protective tariffs, and that America would win every trade deal it made with foreign countries. Using the slogan, fair trade, not free trade. That's the thing. Remember, this is 2021, so this book does not see any of the 2024 and beyond tariff shit yet, even though Michael has done interviews where he talks about it and basically just restates. He's like, yeah, if he did this is what would happen. And look, he did it, and now it's what's happening. Right. His nationalist policy was directed mainly against China, and most of his actions were illegal under international law, but even so, China's trade surplus kept on increasing. The military, financial, medical insurance, and real estate overhead, the FIRE overhead, had imposed such high public and private sector costs that it rendered the American economy uncompetitive, well beyond the ability of tariffs, quotas, and sanctions to overcome. Hey, look, I got to a little chunk thing here. I'll probably finish this next week, but you see the idea where Trump does identify, and many of Americans have, and that's why his shit was compelling to a lot of people. Yes, on the surface, you can have all of these various, people just hate Mexicans. And it's like, well, then explain why 50% of Hispanic people voted for, yada, yada, all of that. If you ask your average blue-collar, regular working American, they're still really mad about NAFTA, like my dad, where you remove all, quote, when he talks about being in free trade, you're like, what? America's always been free trade. I mean how American labor costs so much more internally that we export all of our labor around the world. Right. That is an actual problem that probably needs to be solved. That does need to be solved, because you can't just have where the world is partitioned into the people who get to have a nice life and the slaves, and all the slaves. You can't do. That's not a tenable situation. It's kind of the entire basis of all our arguments.
That's the entire philosophy of capitalism. That's how we got here. That's what this problem is.
So if you look at the equation of the world economy currently, and how the U.S. doesn't make anything, and we in fact send a lot of money out, and then we import most of our stuff, and you think we should instead be making it domestically, if you look at it like it's a video game and you're just kind of dumb, you'll be like, all right, so we must find a way to make our products competitive, meaning to bring our cost of labor in line with the rest of the world's cost of labor, and you can do that by either making America a slave country again, like we were in the early 1900s, where everyone works for pennies and we have child labor and all that shit, or you make everyone else's labor so much more expensive, which is the point of the tariffs, except it doesn't actually end up working like this because it just paralyzes the whole thing. As we're kind of seeing now, it's we can't just pay you 20 times our labor now because you want it to be in America. Also, you don't have any factories anymore, and that takes time to remake, and blah, blah, blah. And you see in the chapter heading here, the who is being isolated from whom. It's kind of what we're getting into with the rest of this. China can go it alone, as he's put in quotes many times, Europe could not at the end of World War II. Europe was actually just freaking burned to the ground in a lot of cases, and its industrial capacity was nothing. Now, China and Europe are doing okay. Russia's doing fine. Even Iran is doing stuff. We're not a whole decimated globe that we can walk in and be like, hello, we are far less decimated and we would like to be in charge. That is no longer the situation. And that's how Trump is acting now. He's acting as if we are still we're the only remaining country. World War II just ended. Every French factory is rubble. We can just take over everything. It's not in 2020 anything. Not anything past the year 2000 are you doing this. Unless we're going to enter into attack the entire world to create those conditions once more.
Which I'm sure he'd love to do.
Well, that's I'm ending for now. I'm not reading any further. It is after 11 for me.
Yes.
We're going to see if today my crap, what is it? we got a new guy who's gonna be trimming our tree out front, and hopefully that goes well.
Okay. Yes.
You hire people off the internet, and you just hope they'll actually like do the thing they said they'll do for the amount you said you'd pay them.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, instead of like they show up, they're like, oh yeah, now I need $500 extra to take away the pieces I cut. Like, you asshole, you fucking shake me down for this shit. So yeah, good luck with that. Like that's I don't know, that's a whole conversation. Well, that's a whole conversation for another day there. Just the fact that I don't know if it's just because people take advantages or if they feel like they have to, but there's so many service people out there now that are doing those kinds of things. Like, you cannot get someone, you can't just call up somebody, a plumber or somebody, and be like, can you do this? And they'll be like, oh yeah, sure. And then they show up and then they do that to you. Like, so, and it's like, oh, I took all of your whole house apart. What are you going to do about it? So that's again, it falls under I think the heading of what we're talking about here today. But that's, you could report back to us on how it went hiring someone, and
probably fine. The only thing, it's almost usually it's almost always a situation of people taking on more work than they can actually do, and then while they're trying to like spin in so many different locations, you end up doing like a little not a Ponzi scheme of excuses where you keep delaying everything, then eventually none of your work gets done and everyone's just mad at you.
Yeah. And it's like, you want to hire local service people, independent people or whatever, or even like companies. You think, oh, well, the company has a good star rating or whatever, but then they all do it. It's like, how are you supposed to win as a consumer? Or, you know what I mean? Like, what a mess. It's such a mess.
That's part of the good news, is that the more expensive people aren't necessarily better, because I've had similar experiences with the like, oh, we're a legit company with a van with a proper paint job, and I'm a guy with a truck, and I'm just gonna show up and kind of, because that's who my dad is. It was just like a guy with a truck who he was essentially a handyman for his first like 20 years. Just, let me stick some drywall up. Do you know how to do this? No, but I'm about to learn it. And like, I can put down tile.
Of course, sure. Yeah, like lying on the resume and getting the job. And you're like, no, I got it. It's fine.
Because you start figuring out that that's what everybody's doing anyway. It's just, do you want to pay a guy $50 to do it? That's what it's like
if you have a house. Like, my house is old as shit and falling apart, and I'm the one that manages it. So it's like, do you know how to drywall? I guess we find out today. Do you know plumbing? I'm gonna go figure it out.
I've just been Googling stuff that I do my own work around here, because a lot of times it's not nearly as hard as you think it's going to be. We had our drain was clearly clogged. I'm like, well, if I call a plumber, it's going to be like a minimum of $100 for them to come out here and just like use a snake. Yes. And then be like, there you go. See, so I'm like, how much does the snake cost at Home Depot?
Like
$20.
Oh, okay, yeah. I did the same thing once. I ran a snake through my entire plumbing because I wasn't going to. But first, when I got it, I sat down in my bathtub with it, and I didn't realize it was sort of like under pressure, and it had like this like warning on it, like, hey, don't fuck with this thing. And I pressed it, and it just went. Like, it just like shot out like confetti, and I just sat there and watched the goddamn
thing. But it's doable. So you look up some YouTube videos.
Yeah, right. All right. Like and at least we have the benefit of YouTube now, so you gotta learn.
You're gonna have if you had a camera, a body cam on your mechanic for your car, they will almost inevitably at some point Google your model number, the part they're like, all right, how do I get this shit out? And then they'll have a guy go, it's like this, and you're like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah, exactly. And don't think that doctors aren't doing the exact same thing too.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
We'll get into how AI will inevitably be taking over white-collar jobs before blue ones next time.
Yeah, next time. Yes, we will be back with you with whatever fresh hell is going on next week, and go from there. It seems to change pretty rapidly. Where it's like news popcorn around here a lot of the time. So, and again, we get stuck in that speculation loop quite a bit because we don't know anything more than you know. So we'll be back next week to talk with you about whatever the hell is going on. Jared will give us the full update on how the tree situation went. Good luck to Jared on that one, and we will catch up with all of you next week. Thank you for watching. Remember, if you want to comment during the live stream, we try to take questions on air as much as we can. So enjoy any of our past episodes, and we will see you again soon. Take care of each other, everyone. Bye.